Hello and welcome back to Wreaking More Joy. I'm Janet Dalglish, and in this season, Rekindle, we're exploring how women can rekindle the romance with our purpose, our joy, and our personal power, especially in our working lives. And today, we're going to meet a slightly different planetary ally. I talk a lot about this idea of planetary allies, whether they are literal, non physical entities associated with a planet, or whether they are metaphors of aspects of our own psyche. Either way, they're really useful to understand and they bring insights that we can lean in on. So, Venus is one of the most misunderstood and misrepresented of the planetary allies, along with Moon. So, the two major planets of the zodiac that have been assigned a female gender are also the most misrepresented. Hands up anyone who is surprised by that. Not me. So, my favorite quote about Venus comes from Jungian astrologer Liz Green, who talks about the idea that when Venus takes a lover, she takes him for her own benefit, not for his. There is not a nurturing bone in her body. She is completely and utterly self-focused. And we do not have a single positive role model for this liberated version of Venus. In this form, where her focus is on her own needs, she is castigated as selfish at best and a gold-digging doxy at worst. So it's not surprising that the modern version of Venus looks really different from her internal power. Her lineage includes the Greek goddess Aphrodite and before her, Ishtar, the complicated Mesopotamian goddess of love, fertility, and war. So this is a far cry from the demure maiden covering her nakedness with her own hair as depicted by Renaissance painter Botticelli in the famous painting Venus Rising from the Sea. It is true that she loves to pair up. She loves to be in partnership. But that's because it is only in her partner's eyes that she can see her true self reflected. And the part of liberated Venus that we are really interested in this space here in Rekindle is her role in relation to desire. She is the goddess of desire, not because she is desirable, but she is. I mean, she really is. But it's because she always knows exactly what she wants. And it is not her job to make it happen. And this is a really interesting phenomenon to me. In the ancient stories, Venus doesn't hustle. She doesn't prove. She doesn't strive. She doesn't even earn. She simply lies back in the temple and receives the offerings brought to her by the acolytes. And you can see instantly how badly this beautiful aspect of the human psyche has been distorted in modern culture, because we live in a world where desire is only considered valid or worthy if it is achievable, sensible, productive, morally acceptable, and that is wildly variable depending on your sex, your gender, your age, race, sexuality, disability status, all of that stuff. Desire is only considered valid if it is unlikely to inconvenience anyone else, unless you're a rich, straight, able-bodied white man. And your desire only counts if it can be acted upon immediately. In our instant gratification culture, our brains are trained to shut down desire almost before we consciously register it. If it doesn't fit these narrow parameters, if it's inconvenient, if it's morally doubtful, if it's shameful or inappropriate, we kill it almost before we're even aware of it. We tell ourselves we didn't really want it anyway, or it wasn't meant to be, and that is absolutely tragic. The thing that Venus teaches us is access to a level of unapologetic desire that is really uncomfortable for the systems that want us to stay compliant, easy, manageable, including the systems that live in our own heads and become the brain weasels. Desire is separate from fulfillment. They are not the same thing. When we activate an absence of rush and we slow things right down, we begin to discover that we're allowed to want what we want. You're allowed to want things that you don't yet know how to achieve. You're allowed to want things that you can never have. You're allowed to want things that scare you. You're allowed to want things that make no logical sense at all. Desire is just information. It's not a demand. It's not a contract. It's not a to-do list. One of my own examples for this is both really, really obvious and devastatingly vulnerable. I want a hug from my dad. I love my dad. He was a fun guy. He was an amazing family man, and we had a very similar sense of humor. And he was one of the best huggers on the planet. So I want a hug from my dad. But he died in 2010, so I can never have one. I can have hugs from other people, including my brothers. I can go back in memory to what his hugs were like. I can enjoy that, but I can't actually have a hug. And if I pretend that I don't, or if I try to convince myself to stop wanting one, that would be a lie. I would be gaslighting myself. It would be a betrayal of my innermost desires and my nature, because that desire tells me something true about my heart, about who I am, about who my dad was, and the role he played in my life, and how precious that relationship is and was. That desire doesn't require fixing, it doesn't require reframing, it doesn't require a workaround. It deserves air. So many women have been trained to believe that wanting something unachievable is weak or indulgent or dangerous or a waste of energy. But Venus says naming desire is power. When it comes to our purpose and our work in the world, this matters so profoundly because many women are quietly suppressing desires like, I want my work to feel meaningful and spacious. I want recognition without feeling sleazy. I want rest without guilt. I want to be influential without being hardened. I want more money and I want more integrity. I want something bigger, but I don't know what it is yet. And the moment these desires arise, our well-trained brains jump in, especially if they've been well-trained by Saturn, as we discussed in last week's episode about Saturn and Jupiter. Our brains are trained to jump in and say, but how? But be realistic. But what if you fail? But it's risky. But what would people think? Venus doesn't answer those questions because that's not her job. Her only job is to say, this matters to me. This desire matters to me. When we deny our desires existence because they seem impossible, it doesn't make us more grounded. It just makes us feel smaller and restricted and cut off and sad. So here is a little gentle Venus practice for you to play with. This is especially powerful if you've been taught to be practical at the expense of being honest. Think about something that you would like to let yourself want. It can be anything. It can be something that you've been too scared to fully admit to yourself. It could be something that feels impossible. It could be something that you've been told is inappropriate. Many years ago, I had a coach ask me what I really wanted, and I blurted out what I wanted. And she said, "Oh, you would hate that." And it took me a long time to get over that judgment that made me feel like I was, I had wrong desires. So anything that you have experienced that says, I'm over here, I'm a desire and I'm starving over here, I'm drying out, but I haven't gone away. When you know what that is, just notice it. If you want to make it about your purpose, that's great, but you don't have to. For this exercise, it can be anything. So notice if your brain tries to rush you into the next stage and it's like, nope, I love you, brain, but we're not going there yet, buddy. Stay in the state of simply noticing the desire, giving it oxygen. Let the desire sit with you. You can imagine it sitting beside you without any pressure to perform, without problem solving it, without editing it, without watering it down, without deciding if it's allowed or appropriate. Just let it sit with you. Write it down, still without turning it into a plan or a to-do. Write it down. Say it out loud. Name it privately. If you're not going to want to say this to another person right now, you just want to have this precious moment of recognizing that this desire is yours. It deserves to exist. What happens next? That happens next. That's not what we're looking at the moment. Let this be enough for now. Not everything you desire needs to be fulfilled. Some of it won't. But everything you desire deserves to be acknowledged. Every single part of it, because unacknowledged desire doesn't just disappear, it goes underground and then it comes out kind of sideways as resentment or burnout or numbness. Sometimes it requires to be processed as grief. My desire for a hug from my dad, often to begin with in the early days, came with a side serve of grief. And my willingness to show up and be present with the grief is what made it possible for me to sit and acknowledge this desire. And it's a beautiful thing. Venus reminds us that naming what we want unapologetically, including the impossible things, that is not indulgence. That is self-respect. Thank you for joining me today to meet one of my favorite personal planetary allies. She is the ruler of my chart. I have Taurus rising. So I have a natural soft spot for her, but I also am really passionate about rehabilitating her reputation so that we can totally reclaim our own inner Venus powers. So if you have anything you want to share in the comments, please feel free. And if you want to send me any private information about a desire that came through for you, and it doesn't need to be on a public stage, feel free to direct message me if you want to. I'd love to see what you've got. I'll see you next time.